If you've ever transferred money, bought airtime, or checked your bank balance using USSD codes, this story is for you. The Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, has issued a new directive, one that is stirring debates and raising eyebrows. Telecom users will now have their USSD services charges deducted directly from their airtime. That's right. No longer will banks handle the billing directly. Instead, your mobile phone will get those deductions from it. This followed the prolonged 250 billion naira dispute between banks and telcos.
Absolutely. So while the NCC says the move ensures transparency and protects telecom infrastructure, critics argue that it will only further burden consumers already dealing with rising costs. Well, tell us about it. So the question is, what does this mean for the average Nigerian, and how does this change affect the long-standing tension between the banks and the telcos? Well, joining us this morning to unpack these are two important guests. The very first is the senior tech analyst at Nairametrics, is Samson Akintaro. He joins us live as well, virtually, I beg your pardon. Also joining us is Frank Eleanya. He's a senior tech writer at TechCabal. Frank, a very good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you so much.
All right, let's just get to it and ask you to give us a bit of a background on the disputes that led to this new NCC directive. What were the banks and telcos fighting over?
All right, so effectively it was about who collects the fees for USSD. Over time, the banks had argued that USSD technology was a redundant technology that they discovered, while riding on telecom infrastructure, and they sort of made it what it was today by using it for transactions. That it was them that made it popular, and also that if it was really about using it to boost financial inclusion across Nigeria, which is really what the USSD is for. And so that argument had started over a long time ago, but the telcos were like, this infrastructure that you're talking about, we are the ones who invested in it. We are the ones who brought it. We laid it. And you riding on it doesn't remove the fact that we are still paying for it while you are riding on it. And what that means is that whatever fees that you collect from it, we want a share of it. And the bone of contention here is that the amount of money, the amount of USSD transactions in Nigeria has sort of increased over time. As at last year, first half of last year, 2024, what the value of transactions for USSD was around 2.16 trillion naira. So that's a lot of money if you calculate the fact that for each transaction that was carried out, 6 naira 98 kobo will be deducted from it. So if you calculate that and then extrapolate, how many billions of naira that is and that the telcos are looking at. So over time, the telcos have been like, this money belongs to us. This fee belongs to us because this is our infrastructure. We are the ones that maintain it. We are the ones that ensure that it keeps running. And for you to take it and then put it on your balance sheet and tell your shareholders it's part of your revenue, it is not proper. So there has been interventions between the CBN and also the NCC, trying to bring truce between the two parties, and it hasn't been as effective as it should be. The banks had not been forthcoming in terms of repaying whatever was owed, so the telcos started piling up the debt. So every other time they're telling us how much the banks owe them. And then part of that tension led to the telcos giving ultimatums that if their money is not paid, they're going to have to plug or switch off the USSD technology that the banks were riding on. And even though the banks try to, project like the USSD isn't so much important to us in the electronic banking system, but it is very important to them actually. I mean,
Right.
aside from the fact that they collect 6.98 naira as fees, there's also the charges that they charge you once you make a transaction, so all that fees go to the bank. So the telcos are like, give us the 6.98 naira. So that's what has led us to this point where we are currently.
Now, I mean, Frank, the NCC is saying that they're purporting this directive as a mechanism to ensure transparency between the telcos and the banks. But in your view, is there going to be any transparency at all? And will this be beneficial as well, giving and what would it mean for the future of USSD in the telcos and whether the banks as well? Because, like you rightfully put, e-banking and the cashless policy in and of itself is a huge driver for our economy, and everyone relies. I mean, majority of the banks and the telcos, they rely on this USSD. Would that deter users from using it? Would there be transparency? What's your analysis?
So it is a shift. If I look at it that way, it's a shift from where we're coming from, where the telcos didn't actually know how much the banks were collecting from, or the total that the banks were collecting, because nobody was reporting anything. Many of the banks were not forthcoming, again, like I said, in bringing back whatever it is that they collected from subscribers. So arriving here, sort of, tell subscribers what exactly you're paying for. If it's 6.98 naira, you're being deducted at every 120 seconds of a transaction that you carry out. You at least know, okay, within that 120 seconds, I'm going to be able to finish this USSD transaction. If for any reason why you have to extend the time, that means you pay maybe around 13 naira for that particular transaction that you're making. So I think in that respect, you can say that's transparency. It is different from what we used to have before, where you didn't know whether you were charged for per session, you didn't know whether you were charged for per service, whatever time it was and all that. So there was no clarity of what you were charged for. So I think now, from the customer perspective, it is an improvement, and from the telco perspective, I think it's also a good thing for them, because it removes this entire friction, like I've said before, between them and the bank. So they're no longer threatening anyone. They're no longer saying we're going to withhold services, and it also removes that tension also from the subscriber side. They're not expecting that this USSD technology is going to be switched off anytime or anyhow, So, and it sort of maybe will forge a better relationship between the telcos and the banks, It might be a big loss, for the banks, which from the word go, it wasn't supposed to be, because that money didn't belong to the banks. It belonged to the telcos. But some banks had sort of like, used that money to do whatever it is that they were doing, and, to project their profits and all that. It might be a huge loss for some of those banks, but it sort of brings a little bit more clarity in the industry, and makes everyone's life a lot more comfortable than it was.
While it is bringing clarity in the industry, I mean, we've been talking about the telcos and the banks, but there is a particular demography we've not really emphasized, and that's where I want you to go. The customers. This change is coming at a time when First off, we had data increase. We're still grappling with that. And then we have the high cost of inflation. Could this drive users away from USSD altogether? Because if the demography most affected are artisans and mostly folks who do small businesses and the likes.
Well, I don't think it will drive people away from USSD. Why? Is because USSD works whether you're using internet or not using internet, and the demography of people who don't have smartphones in Nigeria are still higher than those who are able to afford smartphones. So if you're still using a feature phone, you're not able to afford a smartphone. This is like the only technology that you have to transact business with your customer. So that extra 6 naira 98 kobo that you have to pay for that transaction it's not even extra, because you've been paying it before, but it's just that before it was going to the banks, but now it is now charged to your airtime. So whichever way you were paying it before, so I don't see people saying we're not going to use USSD anymore. If you opt for mobile transfers, you necessarily have to have an internet. You necessarily have to buy airtime to do that. And of course, there's also the option of going to a POS agent to make that transaction. Then you have to now weigh the cost of maybe paying 100 naira for every 5,000 naira transaction, or maybe 200 or 300 naira for every 10,000 naira transaction. So the USS is like an option that that the subscribers have. You can decide, I don't want to use it. There's even been an argument that the USSD is not going to be here for the long term in the sense that if more people get to have smartphones, get to embrace more internet consumption, we probably would not have to deal with USSD.
I mean, that's going to be a really long time. I don't see my mother, for instance, wanting, you get her a smartphone, she doesn't know how to use it. So mobile phones without the internet access and stuff will continue to be, especially in our rural communities.
And just to think about it, USSD in and of itself, besides just the bank transactions, there's also you to credit your phone as well. When you need to credit your phone or buy data on your mobile phone, USSD is needed when you need to recharge something or you are buying something online. The short codes that they send to you, they're all USSD. So the truth of the matter is it's here to stay. It's not going to be eradicated completely. But let's talk about the pushback, right? You referred to that earlier. The pushback from the telcos, that they say that they still want the banks to handle, the billing. Why are they resisting airtime deductions despite the NCC directive?
I think that conversation is still being is still ongoing. I've spoken to quite a number of telcos, and they are still trying to iron out how the modalities will be implemented. It hasn't been implemented. Nobody has started paying with their airtime yet. I'm told probably sometime next week, maybe, but before the end of June, it should be implemented, but they need to align with the banks how it is going to go. I think it's that initial thing where something new comes in and you're wondering how is this going to play out, what's really going to happen, so you're trying to look at all the parameters that are available so that you don't lose anything. I don't think an MTN, for instance, will want to continue giving the banks that money, given the fact that MTN, for instance, account for about 80% of USSD transactions in Nigeria. Only MTN. So if they have that amount of control, and they are the most owed according to their last financial year report, they said they were owed around 74 billion naira, and they have recovered so far 32 billion naira after the CBN and the NCC intervened and said that every bank that's owing, if they refuse to pay, that the money will be deducted from source, directly from the bank's account. So the banks have started paying them. So they have recovered so far 32 billion, which means that they have around a deficit of about 42 billion to recover. So I don't think they. Yeah.
I do not understand how, entities like these or corporations like these would be owing amounts to the tunes of billions, and just let it run. I mean, for how long are you just going to sit there and your bill is piling up and you guys go for conferences and shake hands? Doesn't make, anyway, keep going.
So it pays MTN to ensure that money comes directly to their account and not to maybe a UBA's account or an Access Bank account. So they now have to go and sit down again and start doing reconciliation with them, which will drag again, or maybe something comes up and all of that. I don't think they want to do that. So on their part, I can say confidently that they will go the direction of the airtime. It helps them. Maybe telcos like Mobile, who don't currently have so much subscribers to deal with, might not be so receptive, maybe because of the debts they are owing the banks and all of that, So some of those obligations that they have compiled might be tied into it and all that. But I think for larger players, this is a good thing for them. So it's just to iron out how is this going to play out? How is it going to be done? For instance, there's a provision of this current directive that says that the subscriber will have to assent to a prompt from the bank before the money is deducted, and the bank has to be. It is when the bank is have seen that consent and is present that they will deduct it. So I think all of that technicalities will have to be fleshed out so that there's more clarity around it. I think that if it's airtime that you're going for, just do it already. I mean, deduct it from the airtime, nothing like a prompt or something. So long as somebody has started a USSD transaction means that the person consents to being charged a USSD fee. All that, I will send a consent to you, and all that is just banks maybe bringing up technicalities into it. So I think that's what's currently happening, and that discussion is going to be concluded perhaps sometime next week.
Now, I was going to ask you about a long-term fix, but you have said that Nigeria should be moving beyond USSD. It might take a minute, but it will happen. But from your vantage point of view, what would be your advice to consumers, customers who use this service, maybe to allay fears or to, think of alternatives, perhaps, to using USSD?
Okay, so there are alternatives. I mean, it depends on how deep your pocket is. So if you've got a smartphone, you can use your mobile transfers. You can also walk down the street and use your POS agents to do that. But beyond that is the fact that if one of the things that the telcos have said when they talk about poor internet quality is that they don't have enough capital to deploy because of how regulatory issues of all of that is this as well. Right. So being able to rectify these issues sort of puts them in a position where you can now say, okay, you've got your money, give us quality internet. So it's time to hold them accountable. You've got to demand a little bit more from your telco to say, I mean, we've resolved the issue of your USSD debt that has been prolonged. So now you need to focus on providing us with quality internet. So time to hold them accountable while also you're exploring the other options. Right. And technology evolves. There's always going to be a new payment system that's going to come up, and people are going to embrace it. So let's be on the lookout for that. Again, it's a function of how well you're prepared in terms of smartphone ownership and internet connectivity, the quality of it.
I mean, Frank, this has been quite my huge takeaway from this at the end of the day is that there has to be better accountability and, and most importantly, hold all stakeholders to account. It's not about dragging your money. It's about providing services that is, world-class standards and meet best practices around the world. And Nigerians deserve better. We're paying out of pocket every single day. We're paying all of this cost. We must have, at least just have good internet and, you know, better, you know, services.
I am hopeful. I am hopeful that we'll see that reality. Thanks again, Frank,
I must say
here.
thank you. Yeah, Frank Eleanya, he's a senior tech writer at TechCabal, joined us this morning. Many thanks.